Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy, the Insane Game Freak here. And it's almost time for the reveal, the full deck out of the Nintendo Switch 2. And I thought it would be only fitting to have one more real conversation before the videos come and the reactions come and the game announcements come and obviously the bicker and maybe a version of the console wars floats back in there, even though we already know who won. But that's irrelevant. The point I want to talk about is just the console itself and the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch, for all of its faults, will always be known as the comeback kid. It gets the same level of respect that the Wii should get. I would say, unfortunately and unfortunately, the Switch and the Wii have very similar feelings when it comes to the general populace, although I would like to say the Switch has been better received than the Wii was at the time. To explain what I mean by this is that the Wii back in the day was that console that brought Nintendo back from being irrelevant to the most relevant. You went from the GameCube that sold like 22 million to like the Wii that sold over 100 million. It was a phenomenon. Everybody was playing it. Same thing kind of goes from the Switch. Actually, the Switch is probably a bigger drastic change, going from the Wii U that was like a 13, 16 mil to like 150 million. You went from the console that people couldn't tell if it was a console or a controller to the console that most families have multiples of in their households. That is a crazy accomplishment. But the disrespect still was in the balance for both of these. Like I said, I think the Switch is doing better overall in that regard. But it was, oh well, this is only grandmas play this, only little kids play this. You can't play BioShock on this. You can't play Batman Arkham Asylum on this. You can't play the new Call of Duty on this. It became this big thing to get on the Wii. And see, the problem is they didn't do it when the Wii was relevant. They did it when the Wii was irrelevant. When the Wii U was coming out and we were jumping to the new console, that gave a lot of fans a lot of real reasons to start complaining about Nintendo as a whole and using the Wii U as essentially the jumping off point to say every disrespectful thing you could about the company and their previous consoles, and the Wii being the previous console got the brunt of that damage. The difference with the Switch is that the Switch has gotten a lot of a bigger variety of titles, more modern titles, and as for the most part has shaken a good chunk of that kiddie image. Unfortunately, because it's Mario and Donkey Kong and all the majority of their IPs are still considered kiddie IPs, even the new ones like Splatoon and ARMS, I don't think they'll ever fully get rid of that moniker, but you can't just say they're just for children anymore. And part of that makes me very excited and happy because one, my favorite company is still walking around putting out games and consoles and taking names. At the same time, if you were around when we lost Sega as a console manufacturer, that kind of sucked because you felt like you were getting two different experiences with a Sega game and the Nintendo game, even if they were the same title. And obviously things have become more homogenized, so having that difference in third party or just games in general doesn't really happen as much on these systems. But Nintendo to me represents a certain era of gaming that cannot be replicated, and that design philosophy still floats in and trickles in through either Nintendo themselves or the companies and people that they inspired who are now in the game industry. The Switch changed the game. You can sit there and talk about your Steam Decks, you can sit there and talk about your Logitech Legions or whatever you want to bring up, but the point I'm making is that Nintendo absolutely changed the game and made a name for itself in a completely different market. Oh, it's just handheld. No, we can say what we want. At the end of the day, this console is a hybrid. You can put it in a dock, play it like a normal console, take it up, walk outside like a handheld. That absolutely changed the game. And unfortunately, we're getting into a sequel that will not have the same punch behind it. And the reason why isn't even really Nintendo's fault. It's just time. It's change. This has become more standardized. When you make a trend, you can't expect to do the same trend again, but slightly better to be enough to just sway people. You now have to do even more to maintain that relevance. And this is where the Nintendo Switch 2's biggest hurdle comes into. Can you make your sequel just as interesting as your original in a different way? Because you can't just do hybrid again and think that's gonna blow everyone away. But if Nintendo, regardless of what people want to say, is the king of innovation. You can sit there and talk about what about Xbox Kinect? What about PlayStation Move? What are those things inspired by, right? Those are refinements on a system they didn't come up with. The Wiimote is the grandfather of the Move, the grandfather of the Kinect. You cannot claim anything different to me. Just like the Switch in a lot of ways is the grandfather to the Steam Deck and to the Legion and to all these other new handheld systems coming out like that. If you want to be real about it, they were the grandfather just off the Game Boy itself. So going into the Switch 2 Direct, there's a lot of different aspects. You got the console itself blowing fans away in a way that they haven't been blown away before. That sounded terrible. That sounded suggestive as fuck. Someone's going to jail for that joke. What happened? Nintendo has to excite the consumer just off the hardware. Then we get to the games. Now, I'll be real with you. As a Nintendo fan and someone who's playing these games, I'm not really concerned about Nintendo's first-party offerings. I will say the recent Direct did intrigue me in a way that I didn't think would happen. For those who don't know, Nintendo has never been a company to keep supporting their old content too much after their new content comes out, unless their old content doesn't do particularly well. And even the content we get on the old console isn't anything crazy. It's usually either remakes or ports of something kind of quick and easy you can get in and get out without it really disrupting too much. But with this new Direct, we have 2026 games. Even though it's only of March of 2025, we're already talking about 2026 games. Interesting. But they are in franchises that people have wanted to see in a long time. And because the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, it's not like I expect those games to do poorly anyway. The other thing I think is generally interesting is that we can't really play the games that third parties were playing this gen. I understand that the Switch and Nintendo in general did not get a lot of third-party support, probably going always back into the N64. And so as the generations continued, they lost more and more support and didn't have access to more and more games. By the time we hit the Wii U and the Switch, you're missing a ridiculous amount of franchises that were never on your console. And it's like, well, now we need to get Devil May Cry and the BioShock series and the Arkham series and Kingdom Hearts. There were like Onimusha. Like there were so many titles we missed out on as if you were a Nintendo only fan. And let's be real here. There aren't a lot of y'all. Most of y'all were either mostly console owners or you owned a Switch and a PC and you played a lot of them on PC. The point I'm making is that a lot of the Switch's era in terms of third-party support was a bunch of back catalogs. Square was like, we're going to drop every Final Fantasy you guys didn't get, which was realistically the majority of them, minus a couple of new ones are the ones we don't have. We have the entirety of Devil May Cry, so Capcom ran out of that. We consistently get Monsters Rise, that's fine. I guess there's some Resident Evil titles we still need to get, right? Like we're in the latter half of back ports. You have now hit the wall. Most of these third parties have hit the wall in terms of which ports they can release to us as fans. So now the question becomes, what are you going to put out? You gotta actually put out some new content. You gotta create some new content for the consumer. Otherwise, we're just gonna be playing the little, and that's the thing I'm the most curious about, see how the third party experience goes. Because third party has never been great, but the Switch is probably the closest it's gotten to being good. I think I could genuinely say third party support was generally good on Switch. But going into the Switch 2, you don't have nearly as many back games to support with, and you now have newer titles that you have to be like, hey, we're gonna put out. And obviously I get that there's arguments, well, we don't know what the power situation is yet, and this, that, and the third. That's irrelevant. The point I'm making is that we can't play the port game anymore for this console. We gotta see if companies are really gonna shut up or put up, and that'll be interesting to see. I guess at this point I probably should get into general predictions. I'm not gonna go too deep with it because we'll find out in a few days, and although the theory crafting is fun, I want to try to keep myself as grounded as possible with at least a decent amount of logic to back it up. I'm thinking starting price is more than likely going to be around $400. I think if we get SKUs, we'll get maybe 2 SKUs. Maybe one that has more storage and one that has less storage. I'm going to guess that the screen is more than likely going to be LCD with maybe the second SKU being an OLED version. Because I think proving with the Switch OLED and how well that sold, Nintendo went, okay, people have no problem buying a premium product from us. Maybe we'll see how that goes. I think we'll have voice chat online. I think Nintendo Music will be a part of the Switch's OS from jump. meaning that any song that they put on Nintendo Music can then be played from your Switch on your Switch through that app. I think we'll get GameCube games added to the Nintendo Switch Online service at launch. I'm expecting at least 2 new IPs from Nintendo. I'm expecting it to release in June. Talking third party, I'm expecting 5 major supporters for third party out the gate: Ubisoft, Sega, Bandai, Capcom, Square Enix. Those are the ones I'm expecting. And I'm expecting games that came out either are currently out on the PS5, Xbox Series X Gen, or games that are about to come out soonish. So I expect those 5 there. And if any one of those 5 aren't there, we're going to have words. A lot of words. But that's irrelevant. So if we're talking Nintendo IPs, I'm expecting around 5 major things to be seen. New Mario Kart we already know about. New 3D Mario I'm expecting. Kirby I'm expecting. Probably new IP from Sakurai. And probably a tease for a new Fire Emblem. Although I don't expect that Fire Emblem to be out for like another year. I expect that to be a 2026 title. And maybe if I had to add in a couple of Hail Marys, some remasters, just to show off the graphical difference between the Switch and the Switch 2. Getting things like Kid Icarus Uprising remastered. Yes, I know that's a Hail Mary. Maybe a sequel to Dilling's Rolling Western. That's absolutely a Hail Mary, but I'm going to say it anyway. You guys just got Rhythm Heaven and freaking Tomodachi Life. There's some acknowledgement of the 3DS era. Leave me alone. Let me have this. And I think one more title, I probably would expect maybe a teaser for a new Star Fox or DK. I think there's no way in hell I'm expecting, but I think we'll either get a DK or Star Fox tease, if not an outright, hey, new game coming out this fall. I would like it to be Star Fox produced by Next Level Games, but that's wishful thinking, so I'm not gonna co-sign. I'm not gonna default on that thought process, but that's a theory I have. The Switch 2 is now going to be the first follow-up after Nintendo's best-selling console. And the last time that happened is when we got the Wii U. So, yeah. Oh, and I guess one other guess I'll make is I think we'll get a new Nintendo Switch social media kind of network. Not exactly the same, but something similar in the same vein into Miiverse. I think that's where I'm at with it. It probably will be like their version of Discord, realistically. Which means it'll be heavily monitored and heavily censored and all this other nonsense. But hey, that's a kind of a part of the experience at this point. I think, ironically enough, there'll probably be a lot more Wii U parallels than we would be willing to acknowledge. Now, whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. But as a general whole, and as a general opinion, I'm excited for a new Switch console. I'm excited for Nintendo. I like video games. I'm excited regardless. I just want them to do well. I want them to do well, and I want them to not make the mistakes they made before, learn from them, and overall give us a better system. Thank you for the Switch. Thank you, Iwata, as your last console that you've had your hand in. The legacy has carried on strong, and I hope the Switch 2 maintains that legacy. Life's a game. Play to win. Catch you guys later. Peace!